Oregon lands one of the best receivers in the class of 2026.
You are Locked On Ducks, your daily podcast on the Oregon Ducks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, it is that time once again for Locked On Ducks. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin, and thank you so much for making this your first listen or your first view of the day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day and your number one source to stay up to date with the Ducks. How's the wide receiver core shaking out? The 2026 unit just got a really big name in Messiah Hampton and pipeline positions to the NFL. All on today's show, which is brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. So, recruiting's back up. Everything is fixed. It's all good. Or is this the start of a snowball of something good in a serious sense? I think it's that because Oregon got a crystal ball from Steve Wiltfong over at On3 for Jhett Washington, a five-star safety who visited Oregon not long ago. But Messiah Hampton is the latest member of the class of 2026 for the Ducks. 6'1", 180 pounds, top 12 wide receiver, number 11 overall at his position, according to the 24/7 Sports Composite ranking, just outside the top 100 players nationally. Hard to not like this guy for a number of reasons. This is a great breakthrough moment for Ross Douglas. It's his first commit since taking over for Junior Adams, who left to be the Dallas Cowboys wide receivers coach. He's in that slot, and this is someone who he had a relationship with going back to his time at Syracuse, who was one of the final schools in the fold. You had Miami in the mix as well. Never feels bad to beat out Mario's staff. I know plenty of people feel that way. I get it. I'm kind of right there with you too. But this guy can be a really, really good receiver for the Ducks. And anytime I talk about recruiting here on the show, I think it's easy, and it happens to me personally, to get lost in the weeds on the ranking and what it means and the context of the recruitment. You know, something like it's Ross Douglas's first receiver commit. And you forget, oh, yeah, these guys all have a chance. There are going to be other players to be sure. But these guys all have a chance to be great football players that actually, contribute on the field one day. But, and I'll talk about high school recruiting later on today's show. But Hampton at 6'1", 180. I was trying to think of a comp. I do like comps. I know not everybody likes them. I do, because I think it's a really good way to frame what your expectations should be for a football player, or frankly, even, a basketball player. Like when I talked about Jackson Shelstad here on the show, I said, yeah, he's going to get a lot of comparisons to Peyton Pritchard. He isn't actually that similar. Shelstad is a significantly better athlete. Pritchard might have a little bit more range, but as we've seen, not a lot. Shelstad can pull from just about anywhere. Like, they are not the exact same sort of guy. Pritchard's slower and craftier. Shelstad's got a nasty pull-up game, of course. But Hampton is a guy that is really easy to like when you watch his film at wide receiver for a couple of reasons. And reason number one, I think the 24/7 scout from, I believe it was Greg or Andrew Ivins, said that he'll challenge defenses vertically as he builds speed and has the strength to shed tackles when targeted in the quick game. I don't know about, at least when I watch this film, how much speed he needs to build. Certainly you can always get a little bit more. He ran 11.24 in the 100-meter dash. I think he looks a lot faster than that on his highlights. It does seem he comes from the state of New York all the way across the country, top player in the state of New York, and coming all the way to Oregon. As Brian Smith talks about on this show, and I'll get his thoughts on Messiah Hampton later this week, as Brian talks about a lot, Oregon recruiting is weird. It's strange. There's nothing normal about it because they can recruit so well nationally. They can pull kids out of anywhere, and they don't have a bunch of talent in the backyard. And, it's Oregon. Everybody's got their own perception and thoughts about the program and such. But Hampton coming to Oregon is great news. And I think the speed is certainly there. The league that he plays in is not regarded to be a premier high school football league. Frankly, it surprises me a little that there aren't more elite prospects that come out of the state of New York, but there just aren't. It's just not it's not a football mecca for recruiting like some other places. You think about guys like anyone that comes from Mater Dei, or Mateo Uyunglele played at St. John Bosco, or There are leagues in Texas, like DeCorian Moore played at Duncanville. There are a bunch of schools in Florida that, you're going up against a lot of college kids. So I think certainly, an aspect of Hampton, who's a 4-star recruit, and understandably so, there can be an aspect of guys' film highlights that it is overplayed a little bit because, well, they're going up against guys who are playing football for the last time and are not even going to go play FCS Division II, Division III, or JUCO ball. It's just like, they're just here. So you certainly have to take that into account, and that's why there's always an element of mystery and intrigue with any sort of high school prospect. But what I see with Messiah Hampton when I watch this film, I see bits of Josh Huff and Emeka Ibuka. And I think he's somewhere in between those guys. Huff was a little bit smaller in stature, but I think their builds are pretty similar. Ibuka was a more highly rated recruit. He was a 5-star coming out of high school. Of course, we saw him at Ohio State, and he just got taken in, I think, the second round, late first, early second or so. Dude's a really, really good, solid receiver. What I like about Hampton is what Andrew Ivins noted in his scout over on 24/7. This is a guy who can threaten a defense at all 3 levels. You can hit him in the middle of the field. He has the speed to go vertically, but he can also be used in the quick game. This is not someone who... Another name that just popped in my head a little, Braylon Addison. And all 3 of those guys, particularly Huff and Addison for Oregon examples, I'll stay focused on those. Those are guys that certainly pushed the ball down the field, had catch and run ability, but were really stout, were really sturdy. For being only 180 pounds, Hampton looks really, really strong. Really strong. And his ability to shed tackles and add yards after catch. He also has got plenty of highlights in the return game, punt return in particular. I'm always down for good punt returners. And, his ability to just not go down at only 180 pounds. If he were to bulk up, I think he could be an Emeka Ibuka type who is 6'1", and I think Ibuka coming out of high school is closer to 200 pounds. And when you look at, Ibuka or Huff or Addison, what I remember about watching all of those guys, they were stout. They were sturdy, and that was part of their value. Yeah, that's helpful when you're going after 50-50 balls as a wide receiver, to be sure. But the yards after catch and the ability to get the ball around the line of scrimmage in jet sweep situations or on tunnel screens or on bubble screens, and then to make something of that. Everybody does it in their own way. Tez Johnson just ran around you. He'd give you, the dead leg and a dagger step. Like he was just nasty like that. Hampton will just kind of let guys bounce off him, and that will get tougher in the college game. I think that's one area where he can certainly get a little bit better, or one area where I should phrase that differently. One area where he will have to make an adjustment is the number of times that you can have 3 and 4 guys run at you and bounce off, not as common. But can you do that once? Usually if you can, on a tunnel screen, you're suddenly going from 5 or 6 yards to 15 to 20 yards. So there's a really nice pickup for the Ducks to start the June recruiting momentum. I suspect there is going to be more. I did think by yesterday, or I was hoping, as I stated a while back on the show, as my everydayers know, I thought Oregon would have 2 or 3 commits right now, but I'm not unhappy with where the Ducks are. Hampton committed on Friday. This was one that was seen as all Oregon all the way, and I think that is a good sign that someone who Oregon's supposed to get, they go out and land. So really intriguing prospect. I like him. Good pickup for the Ducks, and hopefully it's a sign of more momentum to come. Ryder Lyons was also on a visit recently. So let me know your thoughts in the YouTube comments. Hit me up on Twitter. All of that good stuff. Speaking of the wide receiver room, I have a question. Well, I should say one of you has a question, and I will provide an answer to that question because it's a really, really fun question. First, this episode brought to you by Game Time. There's nothing like the NBA playoffs. The intensity, buzzer beaters, the fans losing their minds. It's the kind of atmosphere you must experience live. And this year's matchups have already delivered. If you want in, Game Time makes it fast and easy to get seats to go watch Tyrese Halliburton crush the Thunder's hopes and dreams. Even for the biggest playoff games, which are going on right now, prices on the app actually drop the closer it gets to tip-off. And with killer last-minute deals, panoramic seat views, and no surprise fees, Game Time is a total game changer. I have used Game Time several times myself. It works great. You get the tickets on your phone. You get the all-in pricing feature. It's all what you want. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. You download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. I love me some Spencer's Scale of Agreement takes. I mean, I can't get enough of these things, and you guys clearly can't either. This is like the most successful segment I think I've ever come up with. So you submit a take, and I tell you 1 to 10 how much I agree with it. 1 being not at all, a rare 0 can be tossed out there, 10 being, yeah, couldn't agree anymore. So here's one. GoDuck777 says, I'm calling for a super hot take if you can give me your Spencer Scale of Agreement on it. Of course I can. I think all 3 of Mekhi Hughes, Kenyon Sadiq, and Dacorian Moore will all have 1,000-yard seasons. This will go along with the 5 to 6 blowouts I called earlier. I think they will try to run the ball more and use Sadiq as a security outlet like Mariota had with Delanie Walker in Tennessee. Okay, can I just point out, GoDuck777, that is a sicko reference I couldn't love anymore. Mariota and Delanie Walker, that is some diehard OG pro Ducks stuff. That's outstanding. He continues, I've noticed a trend. They don't want their quarterbacks throwing deep balls right off the bat. Well, they also don't do it that often. When they're more comfortable with the short and intermediate range, they open things up a little more. That's why all of our quarterbacks lately have been in the 70% completion range, especially with his turnover history, which will get Kenyon more opportunities with his skill set, plus no one else has much experience playing-wise. Yeah, if I'm Dante Moore, I build a rapport with Kenyon Sadiq as quickly as humanly possible because the guy's always open. I mean, no one in college football is Jeremiah Smith. Kenyon Sadiq is in that vein when you're talking about an athletic skill set that is at least in that category of a, you know what, screw it. He's down there somewhere. Just throw it up and let him go get it. The leaping ability, the ball skills, the hands, the speed, like Sadiq's going to be awesome. I think we're only going to get 1 year of him. I hope we get 2 of him as the number 1 tight end, but man, he's going to be awesome. Okay, so back to this take. I can't get over the Mariota to Delanie Walker. That is, it is 100% accurate, by the way. Mariota looked for Delanie Walker a lot on 3rd down. I think especially in the first couple of games, like when Oklahoma State rolls to Autzen, but you might even see it against Montana State too. Hopefully they're not in too many of these situations. I think on 3rd down and 6, Dante Moore is going to be looking for number 18. Why wouldn't you? Who's going to cover him? Linebackers, mostly not fast enough. Safeties, probably the best matchup, but who's fast enough to keep up with them? Corners, way too small for the most part. So, I mean, Caleb Downs at Ohio State would probably be the perfect guy to cover, or Dylan Thieneman. So, on this particular take, they'll all have 1,000-yard seasons. Give me a 2. This is a 2. I love where your head's at. I do, and I would love to get on here and honestly say I think they could all go for it. But Mekhi Hughes having 1,000-yard season, barring an injury, is basically a given. And I still have this at a 2. Kenyon Sadiq, as unique as he is still a tight end. Oregon has not had. Terrence Ferguson just got drafted in the 2nd round. Sadiq could be a 1st rounder. He did not have 600 yards receiving. He had more competitive depth behind him, admittedly. Sadiq and Patrick Herbert were solid or above average options to throw the ball to at tight end. I have stated several times here on the show, I think the tight end depth is solid. It is not as strong as it was a year ago. So, will Sadiq see a greater share of the passes thrown to tight ends? Yes, I think he will. But for him and Dacorian Moore to have 1,000-yard seasons, 1,000-yard seasons for Cam Coleman at Auburn, Ryan Williams at Alabama were both phenomenal last year in their true freshman campaigns. Auburn, admittedly, had an inept passing attack. Alabama's was up and down. Neither one of those guys had 1,000-yard seasons, and I don't think their receiving cores were as deep as Oregon has now. So DeCorian is going to be involved in the offense. I don't worry about that. But you're talking about Sadiq doing something that's never been done in the history of Oregon football, a tight end with a 1,000-yard season, at least not to my knowledge. Terrence Ferguson didn't do it. Ed Dixon didn't do it. David Paulson didn't do it. Colt Lyerla didn't do it. None of them. Johnny Munt, just keep going down the list. They haven't hit 1,000 yards before. It's really rare to see that. And you'd be talking about a true freshman hitting 1,000 yards. And DeCorian Moore would be the first true freshman in Oregon history to have a 1,000-yard season. The freshman receiving record, I believe, I haven't seen it officially listed by the Oregon website, but based on the data that is publicly available on the interwebs, Darren Carrington with around 700 yards. So, yeah, I'm putting a 2 on that. But if that, I'll give you this, GoDuck777. If this comes to pass and Hughes, Sadiq, and DeCorian all have 1,000 yards, I don't know. I'll do something for you. I don't know what that is, but just stash this one away, clip this little audio, and then send it to me if it happens at the end of the year. I'll come up with something cool because that'd be pretty crazy. So, Chip Ike TN says, question for Spencer, scale of agreement. Give me the increase in NIL and players moving in the, or given the increase in NIL and players moving in the portal. I think high school recruiting is much less important than it used to be in the past. Should be easy to pick up great players who have proved themselves at other schools and plug and play where you need them. So, has the importance been reduced? Yes, that's pretty undeniable. I'm a 3. I'm a 3 on this one. The elite programs are not rolling back the rate at which they recruit high school players. The best of the best. Sure, Indiana brought in a bunch of transfers last year. Let's see how sustainable that is. USC brought in a bunch of transfers the first few years. They got worse each year. I'm not anti-portal, never have been, never will be. Go get the best players you can possibly have for a given season, whether they are transfers or whether they are your own developed high school recruits. The majority of your impact players are still going to come from your high school recruiting classes. Even if you go heavy in the portal by the standard of teams that are at the top of college football, which is, of course, where we all want Oregon to be, you're not talking about more than 10 guys a cycle. That's kind of the sweet spot. Okay, you have 22 starters plus special teams and important guys on the 2D. You're at over 30 contributing players who you need to be better than the guy, as good or better than the guys on the other side. You can't do that in the portal. It's not as it is an option. It is a tool that you have to use. It is not, however, the toolbox itself. The transfer portal is the screwdriver. You can't have a complete toolbox without a screwdriver in it. High school recruiting, though, is just about every other tool. If you took the screwdriver out, you'd say, wait, this is an incomplete toolbox. I can't, this is not effective. I can't use this. This is not being maximized, but I can still get most of my tasks done around the house because I've got hammers and wrenches and nails and all that sort of stuff. But if I don't have a screwdriver, well, I can't do this one thing I want to do. So, yeah, I'm at a 3. I'm at a 3 on that one. It definitely matters slightly less because you can go and fill the void, but your rosters are still primarily being built through your high school recruiting classes. That is not going to change even as the transfer portal continues to be a mainstay in college athletics. Keep the questions coming. Keep the takes coming. I got all week. And we've got a lot of time to talk about what we have talked about this before, of course. The recruiting to NFL crossover. That is how we're wrapping today's show. All right, so Quackerjack, nice. Quacker, Jack, Quackerjack, nice. sends this one in. Listening to you today, you covered Oregon's tight end success. Is the tight end position at Oregon your greatest chance to get to the NFL and have a long career? Johnny Munt is my go-to. This is a sneaky... I know you didn't send this to be a Spencer scale of agreement take. I'm going to apply it anyway because I would like to put an 8 on this one when you think about it. You don't just have guys like Johnny Munt or Pharaoh Brown that when you look around you go, oh, they're still in the NFL. They're still having career. Some of this is, that position can be easier to find your way. But Terrence Ferguson just got drafted in the second round. Sadiq could be a first-round pick next year. Go all the way back to Ed Dixon, who was a stud. If not for the off-field issues, Colt Lyerla would have made it into the NFL. And oh, by the way, Juwan Johnson, who, in the most hilarious turn of events, has, signed his second contract in the NFL with the Saints, converted from wide receiver where he was at Oregon. He's been a good tight end. I bet several of you picked up Juwan Johnson on your fantasy team in the past. I know that I have before. And he's done a really, really nice job for himself. But he's now been reunited with Tyler Shuck. Like Juwan Johnson and Tyler Shuck were on the same team in 2019. Shuck just got drafted by the Saints. And he could go throw the ball to Johnson, who's on his second NFL contract. Oh, man. You got to love NCAA eligibility and the COVID stuff. But bringing this back to the recruiting front, this has sneakily been a really good position for Oregon basically my entire life. I feel like they're always in a good position. When was the last time you ever felt like tight end was just an outright weakness? You don't have the talent. You don't have the depth. I don't know. I legitimately don't know. Like Jacob Breeland was pretty, average in 2018. Wasn't a liability. He's just kind of a guy. That's the last time I think I ever felt, not a lot of real, playmakers there in the tight end room. I just think that, maybe, 2019, Hunter Campmoyer, perhaps not exactly a world beater at that spot. But I think for the last 5 years or so, you've looked at Oregon tight ends and they've done a good job. I mean, the other reason I wanted to bring this up is I talk about position coaches frequently here on the show and the job they're doing. Ross Douglas, of course, with his first commitment since taking over as Oregon's wide receiver coach with Messiah Hampton. But Drew Maringer, I think, is really, really solid. Do I think he's the best position coach on Oregon's staff? No. I don't think he's number one, top of the list. But he's also bringing in a 5-star tight end in the class of 2026. Yeah, he's missed on guys before. There was, I forget the guy's name, but he flipped to Tennessee in the last cycle. Oregon had him committed, but then he, of course, went and flipped Vander Plug from Washington, who I think is solid. But, Lincoln Cure wound up going to Kansas State, highest rated recruit in the history of that program. He's from the state of Kansas. Might have been working with a geographical disadvantage there. I hear that from people all the time, like, man, he should have been able to get this guy. He shouldn't have been able to get that guy over there. I think this position group right now is in a good place. I don't think it's in the greatest place compared to some of the other position groups on this Oregon roster. Sadiq is so exciting. So unbelievably exciting. But the other thing I wanted to bring up, I think one of you asked me this not that long ago. Jamari Johnson was a 4-star top 150 player in the class of 2023. He's going into his third season of college football. Had an injury over at Louisville before coming over. He has 3 years of eligibility left. I'm interested to see what he can bring. What we have seen so far hasn't really been a ton. Nothing to blow me away, but nothing to make me think, this guy is just not going to do anything productive. I'm interested to see how his long-term career plays out, because I think he's kind of a Dante Moore type transfer in that he's brought in without the expectation of being the guy right away, but one day maybe he could be. Now, Kendra Harrison is a ridiculous athlete, so he's going to have to contend with him next year, of course. But, with regards to your question, yeah, I think this kind of has been a sneaky great position for Oregon to put guys in the NFL. And yeah, that stuff absolutely matters. You've got the reputation at Washington and LSU for being DBU, and Ohio State is wide receiver U, and Iowa tight end U. Like that sort of stuff. Growing those sorts of brands, people notice. People notice when guys go and get drafted. That's why Troy Franklin being taken as high as he was. I know he was supposed to go higher in the draft, but still, him going in the 4th round, rather notable development. Because Oregon hasn't made a habit of getting receivers drafted, and you can start to, change the narrative like that, and it's a selling point for recruits to be sure. Nick sends this one in. How long do you? This will wrap today's show. How long do you think it will be before the players attempt to build their own brands, spoils onto the field in the way of logos on jerseys? Sorry, so long. This is part of a longer question. I don't think it's as, frankly, I know there are people like Shedeur Sanders is the most notable example, but, guys build their own brands. I don't think it's going to make its way onto the logo patches. Like, if you don't pay attention to that stuff on social media, I really don't think it's going to come across your timeline. I really don't think it's going to come across your mind or have a big material impact there. So give me a 2 on the scale of agreement for that one. So, I don't think like if Mario is not a great example because he's just such a quiet guy, but let's say DeCorian built like a DK1 brand or something. You think they're going to just put that on every Oregon jersey? No, I don't think so. Would he want it on his jersey? Maybe. Is that the end of the world? No, I do not particularly think so, but hey. What the heck do I know? Appreciate everyone listening. I'll see you next time. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and go Ducks.